Alright, what up YouTube? This is my 73 Mustang. I've never really done a video going over this. I'll give you some maintenance tips. Things that went wrong with this car. If you have this similar year Mustang, they made this body style 71, 72, 73. The drivetrain in these are pretty much common. They didn't really start changing things until 79. They redid the 302. The balancing is a little different and things of that nature. The 302 or 5.0 liter and the C4 transmission are very common. You can have an FMX transmission sometimes and a 4-speed top loader. So what do I have done with this car? It's not too heavily aftermarket modded. This is more of my cruising car. I have a twin turbo Dodge Stealth. That's more my toy car. So I have a Holley intake on it, Edelbrock 600 carburetor, aftermarket valve covers. That obviously does not make it go any faster. I have an aftermarket coil, wires. I have Flowmaster Super 10s on this, and I have Gabriel Hijacker air shocks on the back. Aside from that, I put some aftermarket gauges in here, as you can see there, and there's my tack. So we'll go over some common issues with this car and some of the things that I did. I will try not to bore you. These are notorious. These have timing chains in them. The gears were dipped in neoprene, and then that neoprene wears out, the gears strip out, and the timing chain jumps. That happened to this. Long story short, I ended up replacing the timing chain and put a dual timing chain on this. Unfortunately, I just randomly picked 3 cylinders and checked the compression on it, and I was having good compression. So in my mind, I didn't bend any of the valves. So long story short, I put it all back together, I started up, and only ran on 3 cylinders. So ironically, the only 3 I checked were the only 3 in good condition. What are the odds of that? So I ended up having to tear it all back apart. I lapped in the valves, put new valve stem seals on it, put all new gaskets on it, did the water pump, had it apart, the alternator, the belts, the rad hoses, the heater hoses. There's a bypass hose. Oh, right there that I did. Thermostat. And yeah, so after I did that, this car's never left me sit. It had some maintenance issues with it. I had some electrical problems. These, if you're blowing out alternators or voltage regulators, which are right here, you're usually having a grounding problem. So I ran some ground wires. This is one of them. And then I ran one to the motor, to the chassis. Once I did that, it fixed all the issues I was having electronically. Another common thing is these starter solenoids right here go out. That is brand new. So aside from that, the other thing I will tell you is when you're running aftermarket intakes and carburetors, this is a wooden spacer, okay? Yeah, it probably adds performance, but I did not put it on there for performance. What ends up happening is that intake manifold gets hot, therefore it makes a carburetor extremely hot, and it essentially boils the fuel into vapors, and it can cause vapor lock or very hard starting when the car's hot. Since I put that on, it does not start as hard when it's hot. I recommend that. Just my opinion. I've done points, condenser, rotor, and cap on this. Maybe I'll do a video on showing how to set points on this. It's really not that difficult. This is a vacuum tower. Okay, on these C4 transmissions, there's a thing called a vacuum modulator. There's a little diaphragm in there. If that diaphragm ruptures and you start seeing your vacuum lines getting a little squishy and swelling up, it means it's literally sucking transmission fluid into your intake manifold. Those vacuum modulators are held in by one bolt on a bracket on the transmission. I don't know if this guy over here has one. Yes. Okay. If you look right there, that is a vacuum modulator. Okay. And then there's vacuum lines that go on these. This one's here. Mine is a dual vacuum modulator, so there's 2 vacuum lines here and here. So when you pull that out, you will lose transmission fluid. Make sure you have a drain pan there. The other thing is there's a small pin that rides up in there. You need to make sure you don't lose that pin, and look at what color. When you pull that out, there's a little nipple on there. There's a ring around it. Mine is a red ring. Make sure you get the correct ring because they are different sizes. So that is common. The other thing that are common, this is a rear transmission seal. I replaced mine on my C4, and up in here is a bushing when the drive shaft rides in there. I replaced that bushing. I was having all kinds of vibrating problems in my drivetrain, and replaced that bushing because it was shot, and I don't have vibrations anymore. The other extremely common thing if you have a C4 transmission is this is your shifter linkage. Okay? You cannot just pull this out. It does not work like that. You literally have to take the pan off, drop the valve body out, and then once you get the valve body out on the inside, this seal sits in here, and there's an O-ring that sits right in here. You have to take a 5/8 wrench on the inside of the transmission and break that nut loose. Once you do that, this whole linkage comes out this way, and the other one comes out internally from the transmission. Once you do that, you can pop the seal out, put the new seal in, put the O-ring in, and then put it all back together. It is a pain in the butt because when you're putting the valve body back in, you have to make sure that your kick down lever meshes right and your shifter linkage and arm sits right in the valve body, and you have to make sure everything is the same or it will not work. And you don't want to drop your valve body because it's not a good day. So the C4 transmissions are very problematic with leaking. This is an FMX transmission. It's very similar to C4, a little bit heavier. So just realize rear seal, bushing, shifter linkage seal, and on mine, this one does not have it. There are servos that sit on here. Those gaskets leak as well. Other than that, I did the fuel tank on here. They're very simple. There's literally carriage bolts here and on the other side right there, and those straps come out, and there's a few lines to come out, and your sending unit is right there. Those sending units stick very commonly. You have to make sure and get a new one. I just ended up getting a whole new tank, and then on top of the tank there's the vent hoses that run up to your charcoal box up front, and then your filler neck and all that right here. So I replaced that. The other common thing with these is weather stripping. I replaced all the weather stripping. Here, here, back in here, here, all the way down. These guys here, here. The cowl stripping. You can do the weather stripping without taking the quarters out. Don't make my mistake and take the quarters out. That was a really big mistake. You can use 3M adhesive. You need that. Use rubbing alcohol to clean your weather stripping off and make sure the surface you're applying it to is clean. Outside of that, I've done front shocks, I've done U-joints, and some occasional wiring. The only other thing that has ever given me problems with this is your windshield wiper motor on these, which is right here. There's 4 wires, and you have to take this cowl piece off, and you can see your wiper arms here. They bolt right to the motor here. And then there's 2 bolts that hold it into the firewall of the engine. These are very good cars. I have 13,000 miles on it since I've owned it. The only major problem was the timing chain took a shit. The only other thing I did is strut rod bushings, which I can't really show you, but they pretty much go, there's a bar that sits right down there. They go into your frame right here. They're bushings that go out. If you feel your car swaying like this, usually means your strut rod bushings are out. They're a pain in the butt to get off. And I remanufactured bumper brackets as well. These are very good cars. They did not really change too much in the 60s and 70s, like powertrain wise. I will try to make future videos. I drive this a lot in the summer and fall. in spring. So this winter, I will do a video on disc brakes. I have 73 Cougar disc brakes, 73 Mustang, they're interchangeable. Essentially, I'm only using the spindles. I'm going to get all new brake hardware, do tie rod ends. I would also like to do QA1 shocks up front because there's way too much suspension play up front. I'm currently building a Dodge Stealth too, so we got to see how finances are, but would also like to put new leaf springs on, and this has 273 rear gears. I would like to, I'm leaking a little bit out of the pinion seal to begin with. I would like to upgrade the gears because eventually this is going to be, I'm undecided. Either I'm going to put a 4-speed top loader, which is period correct to this car, or they have a 5-speed kit for this. I like the 5-speed because I can kind of cruise on the highway more and put more gear into this. With 273s and a C4 at 70, I'm turning 3,000 RPMs. If I put a 4-speed on here with 350s, I'd probably be turning 3,500 RPMs or slightly more at 70 miles an hour. If I did 373s, it'd be screaming. So that is the disadvantages with a 4-speed. And 5-speed, you get an overdrive. So those are my plans. I may also tear this down and do a video on the shifter linkage seal, removing the tail housing. You got to actually do the cross member and take the drive shaft out and take the cross member out on the transmission. And if you do it in the car, you have to make sure the transmission supported. But yeah, this is my 73 Mustang. I love these cars. A lot of people do not own these because they say that they are the least less desirable because they call these the big nose Mustangs. This is not a fastback. This is a coupe. This has been a really reliable car. Like I said, I put 13,000 miles on it. I repainted some of the dash and interior part because this dash pad's actually super, super clean. The car has some rust. It's obviously commonly rust up here. They put some kind of lead filler in here where the roof seam meets the quarter seam. So eventually it will be repainted. I don't know when. But for what it is, I'm very pleased with it. So if you have one, I hope this video helps. Leave it in the comments if you have any questions on how to do anything. I by no means am a master mechanic, but I do know these cars pretty well. So I hope this helps someone. I love this car very much. I would recommend this car to anyone. Till next time.